Imagine yourself trapped in an endless expanse of ice, where the horizon stretches into oblivion, offering nothing but the relentless gleam of snow under a merciless sun, and the silent promise of death in every shadow. Miles upon miles of frozen desolation surround you. No footsteps but your own echoing faintly before being swallowed by the wind. No voices calling your name. No distant lights flickering like beacons of salvation. Help is a cruel mirage, a whisper from a world you've been severed from. Yet somehow, through sheer unyielding will, you endure for 205 harrowing days, battling not just the elements but the unraveling threads of your own humanity. This is the bone-chilling true story of Aveline, a vibrant 25-year-old adventure seeker, whose life was forever altered on a dream expedition gone catastrophically wrong. She ventured into the heart of Antarctica's Phantom Glacier with her 7 dearest friends, Liam, Chloe, Bane, Maya, Nova, and their beloved golden retriever, Jack, only to return as the solitary survivor, haunted by losses that defy comprehension. What devoured her companions in that icy tomb? Where did their spirits flee amid the screams of the storm? And what forbidden acts did she commit to etch her name into the annals of survival, a secret so visceral it will haunt your thoughts long after these words fade? This saga of resilience and raw despair unfolds like a nightmare etched in frost. Prepare to be gripped, chilled, and utterly transformed. On November 15, 2021, under skies heavy with the scent of impending winter, Aveline and her tight-knit crew of college friends boarded their chartered Cessna, affectionately christened the Wanderer, at a remote airstrip in Ushuaia, Argentina, the southernmost tip of the world, gateway to the frozen unknown. These weren't thrill chasers in the reckless sense. They were dreamers forged in late-night dorm room debates and cross-country road trips, bonded by a shared hunger for stories that transcended the ordinary. Aveline, with her cascade of dark curls and infectious laugh, had been the spark, poring over yellowed expedition logs of Scott and Amundsen until her eyes burned. Liam, the quick-witted Irish charmer with freckles like scattered stars, handled the playlist, blasting Fleetwood Mac's Landslide as the plane taxied. Chloe, the free-spirited artist whose sketches filled their group chat, sketched frantic outlines of imagined ice palaces on a napkin. Bane, the stoic engineer with hands calloused from tinkering with gadgets, double-checked the emergency kits, his quiet reassurances steadying the group's pulse. Maya, the empathetic biologist whose gentle voice could soothe any storm, packed herbal teas for the chill. Nova, the adrenaline-fueled photographer, fiddled with her Nikon, capturing selfies that beamed with unbridled excitement. And Jack, their floppy-eared golden retriever with a penchant for stealing socks and hearts alike, sprawled across laps, oblivious to the peril ahead, his tail thumping a rhythmic beat of joy, as the Wanderer pierced the veil of storm clouds. The world below transformed into a surreal canvas of crystalline beauty. Jagged seracs towered like nature's cathedrals, their blue-veined hearts pulsing faintly in the diffused polar light. Vast plateaus of snow undulated like frozen oceans, interrupted only by yawning crevasses that hinted at abyssal depths. The cabin thrummed with life, popcorn kernels popping in a makeshift microwave, shared anecdotes of past mishaps like the time Bane's drone plummeted into a lake during a Yellowstone hike, eliciting peals of laughter that cut through the engine's monotonous growl. Aveline leaned against the vibrating window, her breath fogging the double-pane glass, and traced the ethereal glow of an alpenglow sunset bleeding into the ice. "This isn't just beautiful," she said softly, her voice laced with reverence. "It's like the planet's whispering secrets we've been too busy to hear." Jack nosed her hand for a scratch, his warm fur a fleeting anchor to comfort. Harlan, their seasoned pilot with a salt and pepper beard and eyes etched by decades of whiteouts, glanced back with a wry smile. "Enjoy it while it lasts, kids. Mother Nature's got a fickle heart down here." Unbeknownst to them, that fickle heart was already clenching, coiling a trap of wind and ice that would shatter their paradise into shards of tragedy. The betrayal came at dusk, when the aurora's faint green ribbons danced mockingly overhead. What started as a harmless flurry, fat snowflakes kissing the wings like curious lovers, swelled into a cataclysmic white squall, the kind that Antarctic aviators equate to wrestling a kraken. Winds howled at over 120 knots, slamming the plane with fists of frozen fury. Ice accreted on the props in lethal layers, dragging them earthward like an anchor in molasses. Lightning cracked the sky open, illuminating colossal pressure ridges that reared like spectral whales breaching the surface. Inside, pandemonium reigned. Chloe's sketchbook fluttered away in a gale of loose papers, Bane's toolkit clattered across the floor, tools skittering like panicked insects. Maya's teas spilled in steaming rivulets that instantly flash froze into brittle spikes. Nova's camera tumbled from her lap, lens shattering against a bulkhead with a crystalline snap. Liam gripped the armrests, his knuckles bone white, forcing a grin for Aveline's sake. At least we'll go out with a killer view, eh? But his voice trembled, betraying the fear gnawing at his core. Jack yelped, scrambling under seats, his nails scrabbling futilely on the metal floor. Harlan's commands barked over the intercom. Oxygen masks! Brace positions! We're in a downdraft! But the storm devoured them whole. Alarms wailed like banshees. The altimeter spun wildly. A sickening lurch as the left aileron tore free in a screech of rending aluminum. In that final, suspended heartbeat, Aveline locked gazes with Liam across the chaos. Their eyes a silent covenant of love and terror, hands outstretched but inches short of reunion. Then oblivion, a cataclysmic impact that hurled the Wanderer into the glacier's embrace. The fuselage crumpling like foil under a boot. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded inward in a hail of razor shards, and the world inverted in a blur of white and red. When consciousness clawed its way back to Aveline, it arrived on a tide of excruciating pain, her fractured humerus grinding with every twitch, ribs protesting like broken bellows, a laceration on her scalp pulsing hot blood that congealed into a sticky crown of ice. The cockpit, her improbable sanctuary, reeked of spilled fuel, ozone, and the coppery tang of carnage. Emergency strobes pulsed erratically, casting elongated shadows that danced like ghouls over the wreckage. There lay Liam, his body folded unnaturally against the co-pilot's yoke, eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling, a jagged propeller blade protruding from his chest like a macabre exclamation point. Chloe slumped in the jump seat, her throat a ruin of crimson lace from flying debris, her unfinished sketch clutched in rigor-stiff fingers. Bane and Maya were fused in death's parody of tenderness, crushed beneath a collapsed overhead bin, their faces serene as if mid-whispered secret. Nova dangled half through a rent in the fuselage, snow already claiming her legs in a drifting shroud, her Nikon dangling from its strap like a broken pendulum. Jack, sweet Jack, curled at Aveline's feet, his chest still but for the faint rime of frost on his whiskers, poisoned perhaps by leaking hydraulic fluid, or simply felled by the jolt. The silence that descended was more profane than the crash's roar, a vacuum that amplified the drip of melting ice, the creak of settling wreckage, the ragged rasp of Aveline's own sobs. She tried to scream, to summon them back with the sheer force of her grief, but the air was too thin, too cold, stealing her voice and freezing her tears into crystalline barbs on her lashes. Crawling through the detritus on elbows that screamed mutiny, she inventoried the remnants of their lives. A backpack yielding 2 desiccated protein bars laced with chocolate that crumbled like ash. A first aid pouch spilling gauze, antibiotic ointment, and a scatter of ibuprofen tablets. A flare pistol with depleted cartridges, its grip slick with condensation. A Leatherman multi-tool, its blade nicked but serviceable. And pilfered layers. Liam's wool scarf, Chloe's down mittens, frayed at the thumbs from her anxious fidgeting. Outside, the blizzard orchestrated its requiem, piling drifts against the tail until only the nose protruded like a defiant tombstone. Aveline sealed herself in the cockpit with scavenged seat cushions and duct tape, her breath the only fog in the void, a fragile redoubt against temperatures plummeting to 60 degrees, where exposed skin blistered in minutes and metal contracted with audible snaps. Survival's calculus began immediately, a merciless ledger of conservation. She rationed the protein bars into pea-sized morsels, chewed with glacial deliberation to coax every calorie from the desiccated nuts and whey. Water came from boot soles of snow, laboriously melted over the blue flame of a butane lighter scavenged from Nova's kit, each sip a lukewarm victory tainted by the metallic bite of aviation residue. Days hemorrhaged into one another, marked only by the aurora's spectral ballet or the midnight sun's mocking persistence. Hunger evolved from a dull ache to a feral antagonist, gnawing at her viscera until visions of feasts. Her mother's butter chicken simmering on a Diwali stove. Bane's legendary backyard barbecues taunted her like ghosts. Dehydration cracked her lips into parchment, and the cold invaded insidiously, turning her toes to wooden clubs and her thoughts to molasses-thick fog. She fashioned a crude journal from cockpit log pages, scribbling feverish entries with a stub of pencil. Day 7. Heard Chloe humming Bohemian Rhapsody. Was it the wind? Miss Jack's snores. Attempts at morale, reciting poetry from Maya's favorite anthology. Shadow puppets with flashlight beams faded into numb routine, her body atrophying from 135 pounds to a skeletal 110, skin sallow and stretched taut over bones that prodded like accusations. By the third week, the unthinkable breached her psyche's ramparts. Her eyes, raw from squinting into the glare, lingered on the preserved cadavers. Nature's inadvertent mummification, flesh desiccated yet untainted by decay in the sub-zero crypt. Revulsion surged, a tidal wave of nausea that left her retching bile onto the frozen floor. They're not gone, she bargained with the shadows. Just sleeping, waiting for rescue. But starvation's logic was inexorable, a siren's call amplified by delirium's haze. Memories assailed her. Liam's proposal under a meteor shower, ring glinting like a promise. Chloe's tearful confession of stage fright before her first gallery show. The quartet's raucous karaoke nights where Bain's off-key renditions dissolved them into hysterics. They'd want me to fight, she rationalized, tears carving saline furrows through the grime on her cheeks. On day 23, as hypothermia's velvet lethargy beckoned, Aveline's hand closed around the leather man. The first incision, into the meat of Liam's calf, blade grating through sinew with a sound like tearing canvas, drew a wail that echoed into the storm. She wept through the harvest, strips of tissue crisped over the lighter's flame, the char masking but not erasing the sacrilege. "Forgive me," she choked, swallowing the leathery morsels with gulps of melted snow. Guilt became her constant companion, a specter that murmured indictments in the quiet hours, yet it bought her time, vital, flickering embers of life. For the ensuing 77 days, tallying 100 at the crash site, Aveline devolved into a ritualistic caretaker of the damned, her existence a limbo between the living and the lost. She interred them in barrows of packed snow, domed like Inuit quubbies, etching epitaphs with painstaking strokes. Liam O'Connor, laughter's architect, forever in the wind. Chloe Ramirez, colors in the monochrome, paint the stars. Jack's grave was smallest, a paw print mold at its headstone, adorned with a collar tag jingling faintly in gusts. Solitude bred communion with phantoms. She'd converse in hushed tones, soliciting advice from Nova on framing the perfect Aurora shot, or debating ethics with Maya over a phantom cup of chai. Hallucinations wove seamlessly into reality, Jack bounding through drifts with a stick in his jaws, Bain's silhouette tinkering at an invisible engine, blurring the line until she questioned her own tangibility. Her flares arced skyward on crystalline nights, crimson parasols blooming and extinguishing unanswered, while a salvaged radio hissed static symphonies of dead air. Frostbite claimed nibbles of her ears and nose, sloughing flesh and blackened peels she cauterized with grim efficiency. Infections bloomed in untreated wounds, fever dreams replaying the crash in vivid loops. Her eyes, once alight with curiosity, recessed into bruised sockets, mirroring the void that had claimed her joy. Each dawn, she scanned the featureless expanse, willing a speck, a plane's contrail, a rover's track into being, only to confront the white void's indifferent stare. The centennial dawn broke with crystalline clarity, the sun a pale disk mocking her frailty. Aveline awoke from a half-sleep, pulse a desultory flutter, the siren song of surrender lilting through her veins. Let go, join them, no more wait. She curled fetal in her threadbare sleeping bag, Liam's scarf clutched like a talisman, envisioning the warmth of their collective embrace in whatever afterlife awaited. But a primal bellow erupted from her depths. "I won't dissolve into this nothing," a clarion that shattered the ice in her soul. Fury birthed ingenuity. She hammered a propeller shard into a spear tipped with duct tape barbs, lashed rags into snowshoes from seat fabric, and curated her grotesque larder, parcels of provision wrapped in oilcloth, portioned with a surgeon's detachment born of necessity. Shame was her shadow now, a blistering heat beneath the cold. But survival demanded its tribute. At the graves she lingered, fingertips brushing frozen brows in farewell caresses. "Your echoes march with me," she vowed, voice a gravel whisper. On a fuselage fragment she carved their manifesto in block letters. United in flight. One endures to testify. Thus commenced Aveline's 105-day pilgrimage across the Phantom Glacier, a odyssey of attrition where every league tested the frayed sinews of her resolve. The terrain was a sadist's labyrinth. Sastrugi ridges sculpted by katabatic winds into razor-backed waves that sliced through boots and flesh alike. hidden pressure cracks veiled by wind-scoured crusts, plunging her into chasms where blue ice walls loomed like sapphire sarcophagi. The albedo glare induced snow blindness, veiling the world in a throbbing scarlet haze. She navigated by braille, trailing a spear-tip furrow to mark her path, consulting the sun's arc like a sundial etched in blood. Nights were crucibles of torment, temperatures nosediving to 80 degrees, winds keening dirges that flayed exposed skin into raw fillets. She'd excavate bivouacs in drifts, huddling cocooned in her parka, a macabre quilt stitched from scavenged liners. Her exhalations the sole hearth, murmuring litanies to stave off the void. Chloe, that time in the Rockies when we got lost stargazing, this is just a longer night. Falls punctuated the march, tumbling into slushy moats where glacial melt chilled her to the marrow, forcing clawing ascents that shredded nails to quicks. One crevasse plunge on day 142 submerged her to the armpits in ink-black water, the shock arresting her heart mid-beat. Memories of Maya's tidal pool explorations in California propelled her upward, collapsing on the rim to hack coughs of lung-searing fluid, her core temperature a flickering ember. Her form became a testament to endurance's toll. Weight eroded to 82 pounds, a waifish silhouette dwarfed by the expanse. Gangrene nibbled at her phalanges, prompting amateur amputations with knife and flame, the cauterized stumps weeping plasma that froze mid-drip. Rations devolved to esoterica, leather thongs stewed in urine for hydration's desperate alchemy, the ammonia sting a penance for each swallow. Hallucinations evolved into vivid theaters, mirages of emerald fjords where Bane fished for spectral trout, convocations around campfires where Nova projected slides of their halcyon hikes, Jack's barks punctuating punchlines. She dismissed them as hypothermia's deceit, yet clung to their mirth like lifelines, crooning fractured refrains of Yellow Submarine to synchronize her faltering steps. Blizzards pinned her for days, entombing her in whiteouts where direction dissolved, forcing waits in shallow scrapes, rationing sips from body heat-melted snow cupped in palms. Yet onward she pressed, a peripatetic specter, her internal chronometer ticking toward salvation or oblivion. Nearing the terminus on day 195, exhaustion's black tide crested. Aveline sprawled in a trough, limbs leaden, vision fragmenting into prismatic shards, when an anomaly pierced the scrim, a remote pulsation, amber and insistent, winking from the glacial skirt like a cyclops eye. Illusion, she rasped, lids heavy as anchors, the light bloating into a bonfire mirage peopled by her lost cadre. But persistence mocked doubt. It was the halogen beacon of Union Glacier's research outpost, a scientific bastion 30 torturous miles distant. Epiphany ignited a berserker rage. By the gods, I claim you. What ensued was an atavistic crawl, elbows plowing sanguine trenches, knees pulped to bone, each micron a referendum on her essence. Blood-sketched abstract sigils in her wake, congealing into rubicund stalagmites. Delirium gibbered imprecations, but she inched, gasp by riven gasp, the light swelling from pinprick to promise. Twilight crowned her terminus as frost-laced fingers grazed corrugated steel. The outpost's threshold. With a leviathan heave, she ascended the steps, collapsing in a tatterdemalion heap at the portal. A night shift glaciologist, Dr. Elena Vasquez, wrenched the door ajar to confront a revenant. Desiccated, feral, swathed in tatters fused by ice and ichor, eyes feral with the wild's imprimatur. Aveline's parched utterance rent the air. Mother. A primal invocation, ere darkness enfolded her like a shroud lifted. Revival bloomed in the antiseptic cocoon of McMurdo Station's infirmary, feuille tributaries flooding her veins with saline symphonies, surgical teams excising necrotic extremities in merciful precision. When lucidity returned, tears cascaded unbidden, liquid diamonds unfettered by freeze, 205 days distilled. A century in wreckage's thrall, another traversing perdition's plain. She'd redeemed her oath, repatriating their narratives as talismans, their jests echoing in interviews, their valor etched in TED Talks and memoirs titled Echoes on Ice. Accolades cascaded, medals from the Explorers Club, book deals, a foundation funding polar youth expeditions in their names. Yet the ledger balanced in shadows, nights riven by flashbacks of the blade's kiss, anniversaries where guilt gnaws like an unslaked thirst, therapy sessions dissecting the cannibal conundrum's ethical labyrinth. Aveline emerged not unscathed but transmuted, a cartographer of the soul's polar night. testifying that survival's price is paid in the currency of self, yet its yield is the unquenchable fire of witness. Aveline's Odyssey transcends tabloid thrill. It lays bare the human tapestry's warp and weft, fragility laced with ferocity, civility's veneer pierced by primal decree. In a world of curated comforts, her crucible compels introspection. What fathoms would you plumb for one more dawn? If this chronicle stirred tempests in your marrow, share it as a cipher for the indomitable. Contemplate an Antarctic sojourn? Affirm or demur below, bravery's chorus awaits. Until our paths reconverge in narrative's wilds, cherish the warmth, honor the frost. You've journeyed far. Rest well. Rest well.